Hello capoeiristas, today we are going to talk about the Bananeira, the handstand itself. So I want to go through the motions joint by joint to explain how to properly prepare for that movement. Here's the deal, the goal is not necessarily to be able to do and hold that movement. Some people might not want to do that in a game and it's not something that they're interested. But the training or the process to try and gain that capability, that stability on our hands is extremely valuable for any capoeira player. It's very, very important. So let's look at the anatomy of the Bananeira. Looking from the bottom up, we're going to notice that the first joints that are going to be challenged are going to be our wrists. So that means that we need to understand what is the mobility requirement of our wrists. If I place my wrist and I try to extend it as best I can, and if I don't have that right angle here, but passively against the wall, I can get it, that might be a cause of concern, a cause of risk of injury. So the first test that you need to look is, if you extend your wrist, can you get that 90 degree here? If the fingers are not following, that's not a major concern, but you need to have that mobility because you're putting all of your body weight on this joint that's not necessarily meant to handle all of that. So if you don't have it, we're going to work things nice and easy. And that's how we're going to start our warm-up. We're going to go on the floor and work different angles to stress slightly the wrist without overdoing it. And that's going to be the key. The next joint in place, our shoulders. We're going up the chain here, we're at our shoulder joint. For the shoulder joint, we're looking at the same thing as our wrists, meaning that we want mobility. If I place myself and try to reach my hand over my head, I need to have a nice stable body, well in line. If I have any curve from my back, that means I don't have the mobility on my shoulder joint yet to sustain the weight, and all of the stress goes to my lower back. So I have to understand how to contract my core to get that mobility up here. So we're going to look at some shoulder mobility exercises related to the progression of the handstand. Next joint is our scapula joint. So right behind here, this is where the stress of our handstands are going to be. So we want to make sure that that area is nice and strong and stabilized. We're looking at this area here, right behind our back, just under our shoulders. Now, to understand how that joint works, we want to avoid any winging of the scapula. Anything like this. So, to warm up, to get the idea of how to progress to that state, I'm going to go into movements that I'm actually going to go into that movement, but to teach my body how to go into it and go out of it. So that when I'm stabilizing, I'm doing exactly that. My shoulder blades are not popping out. They're staying where they need, so there's no leak of kinetic energy. Let's see what we're doing here on the ground. Now we're moving on here. One of the most important part is to stabilize our upper body, stabilize the spine into that position. Very important. We do not want to flare out into a banana stance because that's going to put our lower back into stress. Even though if we can hold that balance, the goal is not to have the Bananeira at any cost, meaning if I'm upside down, something like this, stress is going on my lower body and my lower back, pardon me, and I want to avoid that as much as possible. Even though I can do it a few times, eventually age is going to creep up on me and those joints are going to just hit that note of that is too much. So we want to stabilize this area here and the backside as much as possible. Here are two little transitions that we can do on the ground to really engage the nervous system on how to contract all the surrounding muscles of our core to really protect us and making sure that there's no stress on my lumbar spine. Good. At this point, we're all warmed up. We work the joints that we're going to be using, how to build it up. We're going to try to progress into our Bananeira stance. Now, keep in mind, we might not get this the first try, so please use patience, be perseverant, but you will get there. Let's see a few progressions that are inspired from various yoga poses that we could use to really isolate that push with the arms, pushing as far as we can here, and to stabilize as much as we can with the core. Now that we're getting better with that, we can simply use a wall. Here's the thing, I like to do it facing the wall and also doing it facing the opposite side of the wall. The goal here again is to make sure that your whole upper body is nice and straight. There's no point on holding it or throwing it if your elbows are not locked, your shoulders are not pressing, and your core is not stabilizing your pelvic bone to your rib cage. Use those glutes, stabilize those areas, hold and breathe a few seconds and do it a few more times. Let's see it. And that's it, guys. That's a nice little progression that you could do either at the warm-up, at the end of the class. You could try to play around with it. Try not to do it too much in a fatigued state because it does require a lot of thinking, a lot of brain juice for those that are new to it, that it's a novelty of a progression. So be patient with yourself. You might not get it on the first class, the second class, the first month, but keep at it and you'll definitely gain a lot of control for upper body movements. Your AUs are going to start to look and feel different. Your acrobatics on your hands are going to start to feel different as well. So be patient with it, have some fun, and let me know how it goes. If you have any other questions, comments, or whatever it is, please let me know, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.